Hey, Internet. I got a very helpful, constructive comment from an account under the name of Roger Dune. He said he was a YouTube channel creator and he just has this account for commenting on other folks' stuff. And I really appreciated the comment because I am looking for critical feedback. I'm changing over from pure academia into this internet format. So, it's a learning curve to be sure. One of the things that he asked about was for me to offer some more thoughts to describe my relationship with academia and kind of, what happened, the processes that led to this point, and so forth. Um, and, I didn't want to clutter the show itself up with too much of that. I want to keep updating, but I want the show to be primarily progressive, looking forward to the new things that I'm doing and the new opportunities as they open up, rather than regressive, looking at the past. But it's certainly a good question to ask. What happened and how did you get here and that sort of thing. And I do definitely have a lot of thoughts on the situation, as you might expect. Um, but I'm going to offer this as a supplemental material. I'll publish this, and if I have other thoughts and reflections, I'll continue to publish them, but just not as part of the primary episodes, but rather as supplemental material. So, um, to give a little bit of background about me and my academic training in particular, which also coincides with my faith and my growth and my religious devotion. But I grew up in a separated, a divorced home and lived with my mother. My father was a great guy, but he came out of a lot of difficulty as a childhood, and um, he was a recovering alcoholic, and he had just turned his life around, found a wonderful lady that he got engaged to, became, AA, total sober, and then he got the death sentence of Lou Gehrig's disease. And so, that was a profound impact on my youth and development. He died when I was 14, so just as I was molting from child, adolescent, trying to become an adult, then, I lost him and set me really adrift. My mother is a wonderful lady, but has a very eclectic and eccentric view of spirituality, which gathers from a wide variety of sources, including ancient Egypt, and generally speaking, she would be described as New Age. And so when I went to college, I was, really adrift and not really sure of myself. At the time, I actually was in ROTC. I was planning on doing a career in the military until I became a philosophy major and started questioning everything, and particularly questioned our motivations for engaging with Iraq. The mission to Afghanistan seemed to make sense in light of 9/11, but the mission to Iraq never made much sense to me. And the more philosophical I got, the more I was concerned with empire building and war and all of that. And so I, at the same time, underwent a profound faith transition. I would never describe myself as an atheist as such, but I was very argumentative, very anti-religious in terms of religious traditions, and particularly things that I perceived to be naive or hypocritical. Those are my kind of push buttons. And I had to take a religion class. I went to Mercer University for my undergrad, and I had to take a religion class. And I actually complained about it because I didn't want to take what I perceived to be a Sunday school class. And yet it turned me around. It opened my eyes. I started studying the Bible academically, and that in turn led to devotional progression in my life and the way that I understood it, and having access to exegetical tools, being able to read and translate these texts for myself really opened my eyes and allowed me to, because for me, the academic search was a search for truth. It wasn't just a search for, what kind of questions we can ask, but what is the ultimate foundations of existence, and why are we here, and all these kind of profound questions that I had started in philosophy, and that led me over into the study of religion, particularly the Bible, which of course pertains to be a revelational inspired document. So, so it was my academic search that, it was my desire for truth, desire for, coming to a mature understanding of reality, which led me to biblical studies and led me to my academic pursuits. So it was never just about a job for me. I didn't go in it to become a teacher. I went in to find the truth, and I found along the way that I still believe to be a very good teacher. Um, but so I went to seminary, and, a lot progressed, and I learned a great deal. Still didn't quite find my way forward. I learned a lot, but wasn't sure what to do after that. The program that I was in, I really feel like it didn't have a lot of mechanisms for support of the students. It's the minority program at the seminary at Emory, at Candler, the MTS, and things might have changed by now. I haven't obviously been there in over a decade, um, but um, um, so I went through the MTS program, wasn't sure, and I was stumbling trying to get into a PhD program, and just not sure. So I stayed around to TA, and I was working at restaurant, working at a Longhorn as a waiter, which has always been my fallback. That's what I did in college, and I had my first restaurant job when I was in high school. Um, so after, I TA'd for a while, kept trying to get into the PhD program with the folks I was working with at Emory, just having no luck with that, and through a sudden and almost miraculous sequence of events, I got my teaching position. So at that point, I just had the one master's and the TA experience from Emory, and so I got an adjunct position teaching biblical studies up here in the mountains, and I loved it. The college really liked me. This was back when it was a 2-year college, and it had a very particular ethos, real small, 600 to 700 students. It had this real tight knit family feel, and my student evals were great right off the bat. So they increased me from half time to 3/4 time to full-time adjunct, which used to be a thing. It's no longer legally a thing, because it's basically a full-time position without benefits. It was called a lecturer position. But when things changed, they had to either downgrade me to a 3/4 time or promote me to a instructor position. And so at the time, the administration was different, and they really liked me a lot, and wanted to promote me, and so they gave me the instructor position, and also really um, supported me to get further education. So I got a second master's online at Liberty University, and the reason I first looked at the program, I first looked at the PhD program, and I asked my mentors back at Emory to write me recommendations to it, and both in their own ways, they declined, basically on ideological grounds, because Emory is a very liberal place, and Liberty is a very conservative place. It's, associated, of course, with its founder, Jerry Falwell, and his son, uh, Jerry Falwell Jr. is the current chancellor. So it has that tie to televangelism, and all of the the neo-evangelical and fundamentalist movement and so forth. So there's some ideological swords crossing there. I like to see things from as many perspectives as I possibly can. So for me, it was opening up to all sorts of new sources I had never heard of, going through essentially liberal education paradigms. And so I did the masters as a kind of testing the water. Is it really bad? Are they, are these concerns well founded? And and I really enjoyed the program. Even though it was doing a lot of the same ground that I'd already done at Emory, because of its different ideological perspective, I was opened up to sources and authors and such that I'd never even heard of at Emory. So I really liked that. I went forward with the PhD in theology and apologetics. It's a intensive based program, so I was able to keep teaching that way I had a salary, I had benefits, I was able to get married to my wonderful wife, who is just, um, the most important person in my existence, and continues to be more and more important to me every day. And we've been able to have the kids because we had medical benefits. It was a really ideal situation. The college was helping me out with tuition reimbursement and so forth, and so I worked my way through the PhD program, and the administration at the college changed, and gradually over time, and while they continued to keep helping me with tuition, it kept changing also until essentially nobody was there that I had come in under, and there was a long sequence of frictional events with the department chair, who had come into the position under very questionable circumstances, and there was a very bad situation which caused one of the other members. It's a very small department. Caused one of the other members to leave under duress. He wasn't fired, but he wasn't renewed, and there was all this fallout, and it was a really fractional event that never quite healed. And ideologically, I'm on the conservative theological side of the spectrum. The department chair is an ardent secularist and is all about the nomenclature of religious studies as being basically non-religious studies, that it somehow conflicts with devotional activities, and it causes, it creates this very, I find, arbitrary divide in the name of so-called objectivity. And so I attempted to have an academic conversation about these issues of ideology and so forth. Again, I'm standing right at the end. In fact, I almost certainly would have the dissertation done were it not for the increasing pressures from this individual who, uh, through his typical passive-aggressive maneuvers, basically forced me to completely adopt a whole new set of books, particularly ones that he knew I did not like, because I found them to be argumentative, and I'm not a fan of their style of scholarship. I try to find middle-of-the-road folks who appreciate both sides and can empathize with both sides in divisive situations. He's a very divisive fellow who likes to read divisive people and loads it all in favor of one viewpoint. I tried to interact with this. I tried to come at it from an academic perspective, because again, I was in academia because, I mean, the reason I kept pursuing it, the reason I really loved my job and everything, was this academic freedom, right? The idea expressed by, classically by Thomas Jefferson back when he was arguing in favor of the Virginia Religious Freedom Act, when he was governor, that truth, if left to its own devices, always prevails, right? That's what the academic process is about: discerning truth, creating mechanisms for debate and dialogue, so that it's not just ideological trench warfare, but you can actually have, interactive dialogue and discussion. And I tried to have that. I tried to cite sources and bring in, and repeatedly I felt demeaned, and my arguments were simply avoided, never answered, and basically it became a shoving match that he's the chair and I'm a non-tenure instructor, so I need to shut up about it. That was the overwhelming response that I got, because I tried to raise flags. I thought it was inappropriate that what I perceived to be anti-religious ideological biases were being expressed in a religious school, as in it is a Christian-affiliated college. And I thought that this was inappropriate and against the spirit and ethos of the place and what it stands for. The fact, I mean, it was founded by a minister, and I felt that this was just absolutely inappropriate and out of place. And all of my warnings and red flags were not heeded, and here I stand. I'm the one that gets laid off. And so, even as I talk about it, my pulse starts racing again, because it's largely unresolved. I tried to keep a very tight lid on it. Once I was given that basic perspective that I need to shut up and do what I'm told, I did. I'm not the kind of person that does that very easily, and I tried to bend over backwards to do everything that I was told and just shut up about it, not raise any arguments, not question anything, just do as I'm told. And I tried to do that absolute at best of my ability. Apparently, it still wasn't good enough, or it just didn't matter. It wasn't part of the equation because I don't actually know the conversations that led to me being laid off. I was on the schedule for the fall semester, and I assumed that the danger had passed, at least for that round, at least for that academic cycle. And then, almost the very end of May, I get this sit-down conversation. Suddenly, by the way, you're being laid off, and I still finished out I had summer teaching duties online, so I still put hundreds of hours into that because I was designing classes and filming lectures, and all of that was like a sledgehammer right in the middle of that process, which made that process so much longer and harder to do because I had to just, build up the spirit to get to it, and that was a hard process. But anyway, so, I don't want to go into any more specifics than that, but I think that's a general outline of how we got from there to here. I'm almost done with my dissertation. I'm working through revisions and hoping to get a defense date soon. It's hard because what started basically as a paper chase so that I could get a tenure track, now I'm looking at never being in academia again because I'm just kind of fed up with the processes that led to this, and I think it exposed a lot of biases in the academic uh, structure itself, and I just don't know if I could even go back to academia at this point, even if I had a job offer. It would have to be at a place like Liberty or something comparable that has a very strong stated Christian emphasis, because I just could not. The damage that was done to my psyche while I was toiling under the direction of this individual is just, I'm still trying to patch it up, still trying to work through all the damages and scarring that I've you know incurred. So um, anyway, so that's an introduction. I might do some more supplementals if people act like they care, if anybody wants to know. But that's a little bit of background about me and why I'm doing this rather than standing in a classroom right now talking to a group of college students. So.